Life. Oh, yeah. Uh-oh. 3,700? I ignore that.
That's a word. That's
Uh-oh.
actually Dr. Meehan.
Oh my God. Go. You want me to answer it? Or you know how to.
It's okay. I'm
Okay.
gonna have to call them back. So we are live, right? Hello.
I got it.
Yeah, hello.
Oh, here.
Come in. I got it.
Let me go.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the House of Refuge, Week 2 Healing Our Communities Camp. We're excited. I bring you greeting on behalf of first God, the Holy Spirit, the head of our lives, and our Bishop Joan Whitaker, all our pastors, all our members. Welcome. If you all don't know by now, we are doing a month-long Healing Our Communities camp right here at 81 Croton Avenue in Austin, New York. We give God thanks for all the volunteers, for everyone that is donating their time, their expertise, for the team that has worked behind the scenes tirelessly with putting this together. So we just give God thanks for all of you. I'm going to do what we do best, and then I'm going to introduce our speaker for today, Terri Lukin. Father God, we bless you and we praise you. We honor you. We thank you, Lord God, to be able to do events like this in the community, Father God. We thank you for those that have partnered. We thank you for the visionary, our Bishop Joan Whitaker, and those that work alongside her, Lord God. Lord God, we thank you because your word reminds us that our body is your temple, Lord God. And so we want to do things, Lord God, to take care of our mind, body, and spirit because you would have us to be whole. And we submit all these sessions to you in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. So again, We're doing this all month long. Come to 81 Croton Avenue at 12 o'clock every day. We serve lunch. It has been delicious. Today I had curry chicken, yes, and white rice and salad. We're talking about health, right? So we had some good, we had salad and we had water. Okay, so we fed all the kids that are in this building. We fed everybody that came by to pick up lunch. We still have a few more plates, and we want to make sure that if you need something to eat or know someone that needs something to eat, please contact us or come to 81 Croton Avenue. The whole purpose of this is just to have community come together. Our world has been ravaged by the COVID-19 virus, but we believe that we are the salt and the light of the world. And so that is what we are here doing, is just putting a smile on people's face, giving out information, doing whatever we can. Week 1 was amazing. We had an awesome community fun day. Woo! And the community showed up in numbers. We had an awesome time in our parking lot, cooking, playing. All the kids were out. So if you guys were there, you know it was awesome. Don't miss the next one. And also, we had VBS last week. We had all the kids in this building, from top to bottom in this building. We're excited about that, and we've been feeding. The counseling sessions are going really well. Even my patients took advantage of that. So we thank God for that. And week 2 is health and wellness, and the person who is kicking it off is none other than Terri Lukin, and I just want to read a little short bio about her. Some of you may recognize her. She was on our COVID panel earlier this year and gave us some awesome information. Terri Lukin is a nurse practitioner and a certified nurse coach. She is Director of Health Services for Meredith Corporation and serves on the executive committee and as chair of the health committee of the Austin NAACP. She has more than 30 years of experience providing primary health care, wellness, and health coaching to her patients and clients. She will be offering blood pressure and body composition screenings and will be speaking on today your lifestyle and your health and high blood pressure and heart disease And tomorrow she'll be speaking on managing stress and maximizing resilience during COVID-19. At this time, it brings me great honor to introduce her to you, none other than Terri Lukin.
Woo!
Great. Well, thank you very much. That's an enthusiastic and hard act to follow, but I will do my best. So I already got a great introduction, but I just wanted to share that, I've been a nurse practitioner for about 35 years, and most of you know what nurse practitioners provide: primary health care and health education and coaching. My job is at a corporation called Meredith that has People Magazine, EW, Health, all sorts of magazines. So I take care of all of the employees there and then help with their wellness program, managing their leaves and all of that. I chose to volunteer, been a community volunteer for a long time, but chose to volunteer with the NAACP in Ossining because they are sort of getting back together and starting to offer more and more programming. So in that capacity, I've worked quite a bit with COVID-19 vaccinations. I was honored to be asked to speak on the panel at HORAC, and it really was a pleasure to give that information. I've been working also with the DOOR and with local healthcare providers, trying to get vaccination clinics and getting the word out about the vaccine. So Kay asked me what I wanted to speak about, and I said I can pretty much talk about anything, but we decided to talk a little bit about today your lifestyle and your health. And I didn't prepare a whole hour. I wasn't really sure what the venue would be, but I'm here to answer any questions about anything. But I figured I would briefly go over some of the major diseases that our lifestyle plays into. So before COVID-19, most of the medical conditions that affected and afflicted us had to do with our lifestyle. Conditions like diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, strokes, even cancer can often be prevented or at least mitigated, made a lot less serious based on our lifestyle. So by changing your lifestyle and trying to do things in a more healthful way, you can either delay the progression of these illnesses or maybe even prevent or reverse them. So I'll start today by speaking a little bit about diabetes. It is a very common illness in America now, unfortunately even more common in the African American population. But one thing I wanted to talk about is it's in my genes. We all like to talk diabetes is in my family, it's in my genes. There are some illnesses that are directly inherited. A good example of that is sickle cell anemia or hemophilia. Those are illnesses that are literally in your genes. You get the gene for that illness and you're going to get it. And those are very unfortunate illnesses, and they're very hard to do something about. If you have the gene for sickle cell, it's something that's going to be part of your health for the rest of your life. That is very different from saying diabetes runs in my family. When you say diabetes runs in your family, it often means that you're just more likely to get it. And that's not called a genetic disease, but a genetic predisposition. Which means if you don't take really good care of yourself and try to do all the things I'm going to talk about, you're going to be more likely to get it. But it runs in your family, but it's not inherited. And that's a really, really important distinction, because it's often easier to think that we can't do anything about something than to do the work that we need to do. So I'll talk a little bit about diabetes, about the pathophysiology, the incidence, how you diagnose it. I don't want to get too technical, but I also don't want to be too boring, so hopefully I'll find that middle ground that gives you the information you need. So simply put, diabetes occurs when your body is not able to use the food it digests well. So when we eat food, anything from carbohydrates, which are our fruits and our vegetables and our grains, to fats, which is, stuff that you would get in butter fat and meat fat, and even in some oils, as well as proteins, which are things like beans and lean meats. your body breaks everything down to glucose. Glucose, which is another word for blood sugar, that's how your body uses energy. So no matter what you eat, your body's gonna digest it down to glucose. But in order for your body to make energy, that glucose needs to get into your cells. And what diabetes is, it's an affliction where your body is not able to use that glucose well. So what happens is instead of the glucose going into your cells where it can be used for energy, it stays in your blood, and you get what we call hyperglycemia or high blood sugar. So high blood sugar happens when your body is not able to get the glucose out of your bloodstream and into your cells. So how does your body get the sugar out of your bloodstream and into your cells? I like to think of it as sort of a lock and a key. So every cell has a little hole for a key to go in, and the thing that opens that door to let the sugar into your cells is insulin. So insulin is a hormone that is made in your liver and your pancreas that helps your body use the glucose that you need to get energy. So insulin is an enzyme that allows the energy to go into your cells where it works. When you have diabetes, and I'll talk about the two different types of diabetes, your body is not able to use that insulin well. So when that blood sugar stays in your bloodstream, it can cause a lot of problems. High blood sugar affects your eyes, it affects your blood vessels, it affects your kidneys, it affects your nerves. So it pretty much affects everything. So there are two different types of diabetes, as most folks know. One is called type 1 diabetes. And interestingly, we used to call that juvenile diabetes because we never saw type 2 diabetes that we used to call adult onset diabetes in kids. So we used to call them juvenile diabetes and adult diabetes. Unfortunately, because our lifestyle is getting worse and worse, we're starting to see type 2 diabetes, what we used to call adult diabetes, happen earlier and earlier. So now we call them type 1 and type 2. So I'm not going to talk about type 1 much. We all have heard about, and you can get type 1 at any age, but most people get it in late childhood, sometimes early childhood, or in early adulthood. And type 1 diabetes is what we call an autoimmune disease. That's like things like lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. Those are all autoimmune diseases where your body is unable to produce the insulin it needs to allow that glucose to get into your cells. So insulin is created by your pancreas. It's created by a part of your pancreas called your Isle of Langerhans, and they no longer produce enough insulin to control your blood sugar. So when that happens, when kids get diabetes, get type 1 diabetes, they just have to go right on insulin. Unfortunately, insulin is not something you can take by mouth. It's destroyed in your gut. So the only way to get insulin into your body is through an injection. There are some inhaled insulins that they're experimenting with, and they continue to do research to try to treat insulin insufficiency with oral medications, but more often than not, that's when you start to need the shots. And young people especially will often use an insulin pump. So rather than needing to poke yourself 3 times a day and check your blood sugar 4 times a day and titrate the dose, insulin pumps have gotten very smart. So they check your blood sugar on a regular basis and they titrate the dose of insulin so that you have the right amount for the amount of food you're eating. So type 1 diabetes, in conclusion, is an autoimmune disease where your body doesn't produce insulin, and the only way to treat it, it's not curable, but it's treatable, the only way to treat it is by using insulin. That's not the one I'm going to talk about, although I talked about it for a while. I'm going to talk about type 2 diabetes. So type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle disease. It is, there are genetic predispositions. The likelihood to get it does run in your family, but it has a lot to do with your lifestyle. Type 1 diabetes starts with what we call insulin resistance. So it's not that your body isn't making enough insulin, it's that the insulin just doesn't work that well and your cells are resistant to it. So where, how sometimes you go to a hotel, well now there's no more keys, everything's cards, but how you have an old car and you sort of have to jiggle that key, it's just not going to start. That's how type 2 diabetes begins. It begins with insulin resistance and your body's sort of jiggling that key, trying to get that glucose into your cells, and your body is really smart and really reactive, so it starts making more and more insulin because it's saying, let's send more keys, maybe we'll send the right one there. So you start by being insulin resistant, and then eventually, often diabetics do end up insulin deficient and do need to go on insulin. So many diabetics have no symptoms. The symptoms of diabetes, and you may have some people in your family or may be afflicted with it yourself and you may remember this, the most common one are increased thirst and increased urination and increased hunger. So if you're thirsty all the time and need to use the restroom all the time, that could be a sign that you have diabetes, and that's something to get checked out. Other common symptoms are fatigue, although there are many causes of fatigue. Diabetes is one of them. Blurred vision, sores that won't heal. If you have a wound that's just not healing well, and those of us who have family members with diabetes know about those terrible foot ulcers that just won't heal because your body just doesn't have the ability to heal itself. Or frequent infections, someone who catches every bug that goes around, every cut turns into a wound infection. That's a good reason to be screened for diabetes. So diabetes is crazy frequent in our population. Less so in other populations, but the good old American diet definitely helps lead to diabetes. So more than 34 million people in the United States have diabetes, and 1 in 5 don't know it. 20% of them have no clue. And if that blood sugar stays, that's when it starts to affect your nerves, your vision, your heart, your brain. All of those things get affected by the hyperglycemia, the high blood sugar. Pre-diabetes is even more common. 88 million U.S. adults have pre-diabetes. I know I'm one of them, working on it, but my blood sugar snuck up, and before I knew it, I said, oh my God, I used to be skinny, what happened? So I'm on that same train as 88 million of my American colleagues are with pre-diabetes. And the scary part is 84% of people with pre-diabetes don't know it. So many of us have an elevated blood sugar, not high enough to be diabetes, but high enough that it's a problem, and don't even know it. So type diabetes is the 7th leading cause of death in the United States. That's pre-COVID, so it might have gone to 8, but it had been 7. And it accounts, and type 2 diabetes accounts for 90 to 95% of diabetes. So most of us who have diabetes, especially diagnosed in adulthood, it's type 2 diabetes. Only 5 to 10% of diabetes is type 1. So how do you diagnose diabetes? The main way to do it is by the only way to do it really is by getting your blood checked. So one of the ways we diagnose is what we call a fasting blood sugar. Fasting blood sugar is when you have blood drawn, and it can be just a little finger prick, it doesn't have to be blood from your vessel, and you find out your blood sugar when you're fasting, which means you haven't eaten anything for 10 to 12 hours, is over 124. It should be when you're fasting under 100. If it's between 100 and 124, we call it pre-diabetes, and if it's over 124, we call it diabetes. But we don't want to diagnose diabetes on just one blood sugar reading, just like we don't want to diagnose hypertension in just one blood pressure reading. So oftentimes your doctor will do what's called a glucose tolerance test. So a glucose tolerance test is when you come in fasting and you drink this really crummy cola, sugary drink, and then you take your blood sugar and you don't eat anything. You take your blood sugar 1 hour later, 2 hours later, and 3 hours later. And that way they can see the curve, because everyone's blood sugar is going to go up right after they eat. That's normal. But it watches to see what happens over that 3 hour span to see how well that insulin can get the blood sugar into your cells and out of your blood system. So a glucose tolerance test is one common way. Another common way is with a blood test that we've all probably heard of now, and if you haven't, and you have a touch of sugar, you should ask your doctor to order it. It's called a glycosylated hemoglobin, or a hemoglobin 1AC. And that's a test of what your blood sugar has been for the last 90 days. So whereas, if I check your blood sugar now, it could be anything and it changes from minute to minute and day to day, your hemoglobin 1AC is a measure of your blood sugar over the past 3 months. So that's a really, really good test to get. We start to diagnose diabetes when it's over 6.5, and we call it pre-diabetes when it's over 6. So mine hit 6 once, and then I lost some weight, I started eating more healthfully, and now it ranges, I only check it once a year, but it ranges between like 5.7, 5.8. So I like to call what I have pre-diabetes, and my job is not to let it get any worse. Of course 20 pounds less would probably be helpful, but weight loss is only one way to control diabetes. It is the most important way to control diabetes though. If you are overweight, you are at a higher risk for diabetes, but you don't have to turn into a skinny person. Losing 7% of your body weight will significantly reduce your risk for diabetes. So if you weigh 200 pounds, losing 14 pounds makes a huge difference. Now that's not easy. I've been trying to lose 14 pounds for about a year. I've done about 5. But, it really, and then when you lose that 14 pounds, when you lose that 7%, hopefully you keep going and you go for the next 7%. But for some of us who have gotten really heavy, to try to lose 25% of your body weight, you go, no way, man, I'm not even trying. And you go out for ribs or that chocolate shake. Where if really all you need to lose is 7%, that's a lot more realistic. So how do you do that? What do you eat? And, I'm not telling you anything that your grandmother couldn't tell you, because one of the things I always tell my patients, now I'm getting old, so I have to say your great-grandmother, if you eat what your great-grandmother ate, you would be much healthier than if you eat what you eat. Your great-grandmother did not go to McDonald's. She did not go to Kentucky Fried Chicken. She made her own fried chicken, but she had one piece with lots of collards, lots of other stuff, where, we like, the only thing we're going to eat is the mashed potatoes with it. We're definitely doing ourselves a disservice. So what you want to do, and there's a million diabetes diets, everyone has a quick fix. It's worth it if they sound right to you to give them a try, but I tend to go with the tried and true. So basically, the simplest way to treat diabetes is by nutrition, is looking at your plate. Half, and your plate, snacks are a little different, but half of your plate should be non-starchy vegetables. Anything you like. Broccoli, collards, Brussels sprouts, beets, and they all, the beet diet is the most amazing thing, the sprout diet. Figured if any of them really worked, there wouldn't be a new one every 90 days, but I won't editorialize. If you like beets, you're never going to get diabetes by eating too many of them. But you want to get rid of the non-starchy vegetables. So the starchy vegetables are really potatoes, and frankly, white potatoes. I tell my patients, just don't eat anything white. Don't eat white flour, because that's all crap. I'm sorry, that's not healthy. Don't eat white potatoes, and don't eat white sugar and white fat, which is the saturated fat in the meat. So if you try to throw white stuff out of your diet, that's like a great way to start. So you want half your plate to be green, leafy vegetables. Again, when you think about how Grandma ate, there was one little ham hock in that big pot, and everybody split it. There wasn't, 12 ounces for each of us, like you go into a restaurant and get a steak, and, that could have fed a family of 4 50 years ago. But then a quarter of your plate should be carbohydrates, and it's better to use, and people talk about low carbs. I do want to say that vegetables are carbohydrates. So when we talk about low carbs, what we're talking about is low, starchy, refined carbs. So if you love potatoes, sweet potatoes are amazing. Notice they're orange. They are full of beta-carotene, which is vitamin A, and they're super healthy. If you eat a white potato, but you eat it, you just bake it in the oven, that's pretty good too. Eat the skin, that's where the fiber is. Fiber is really good at preventing diabetes. But what do we do with our potatoes? We smother them in sour cream. We deep fry them. Of course, fat is delicious, let's face it. If we all, we wouldn't be overweight if, broccoli was the most delicious food on the planet. So we got to admit that that stuff is great, but we just have to portion control it. If you tell yourself, I can never have something, that's all you're going to want to do is eat that one thing. If you tell yourself, I can have it on Saturday, or I'm going to, have French fries, but I'm going to get the small fry from McDonald's and I'm going to split it with my kids, and one of the things I read that I thought was really fascinating was, I read it in People magazine, we do a lot of interesting stuff there, a little plug for my company. When you really want to eat something delicious, and tomorrow I'm going to go into mindfulness, we eat so fast. And we eat while we're talking. We eat while we're looking at our phone. We eat while we're watching TV. You don't even taste it till the 5th bite. And by then you've had too much. So if you're going to eat something that's a little bit of a forbidden pleasure, I read a great chef who was a pastry chef, and they said, how do you maintain your weight? And he said that really all you need to get satisfied by a food is 3 bites. Wow. Now, I put that to the test, and I raised it to 4. By 3 bites, I need 1 more. But 4 bites. So if you have a piece of chocolate cake, look at that chocolate cake. When you're putting your fork into the cake, watch how deliciously flaky and creamy it is. Bring it up to your nose, smell it before you eat it. Let your olfactory, which is one of the strongest senses we have, let that help you realize how delicious it's going to be. Put that bite in your mouth. Eat it slowly, chew it well, swallow it, put your fork down, have another bite. Give it a test. I can almost guarantee you after 4 bites, it's not that you're not going to want more. You always want the whole piece, and then there's often seconds, but you'll feel satisfied. Just, I always tell my kids that your brain and your mouth have distance between them, so you don't have to say everything you think. Well, your brain and your stomach also have distance from each other, and it takes a while for your stomach to signal your brain that you're full or that you're satiated from a particular flavor. So if you start really slow, eat them really luxuriously, you will find that it might not be 4 bites, but it might be like 6 instead of 14. So give that one a try. So a quarter of your plate should be carbohydrates, and that would also be your dessert. So it's not like the quarter is potatoes and then the chocolate cake. So, again, if you decide that you really want a sweet dessert, you might avoid the potatoes or the noodles or the rice. And when you're eating the potatoes and the noodles and the rice, there's things, and I don't want to get too technical, but there's something called high glycemic foods and low glycemic foods. Low glycemic foods are something your body can digest really quickly, gets all that sugar into your bloodstream, causes that spike that can lead to diabetes. High glycemic foods, your body has to digest more slowly, keeps your blood sugar more stable, and is less of a risk to make diabetes go faster. So that's why brown rice is better than white rice. Whole wheat noodles are better than, regular Good News noodles or whatever the heck. So try to add whole wheat bread or rye bread or sourdough bread is going to be better than white bread. So really try for that whole grain, because the fiber is super, super healthy at preventing cancer, but it's also really helpful at keeping your blood sugar stable. So I promised to talk for a short amount. I could go on forever. Should I go quicker, or what do you guys want?
Keep
Keep
going.
going for a while?
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to also try to limit saturated fat. There's different kinds of fats. There's saturated fat, there's monosaturated fat, and there's polyunsaturated fats. So saturated fats are the fats that become solid at room temperature. So if you're cooking something, let's say in butter, and you get a phone call and it's your mom and you have to talk to her for 20 minutes and you come back to that pan, that butter is going to be solid. If you're cooking something in olive oil, you could go, clean your whole bathroom and come back and it's still going to be a liquid oil. So your best oils and fats are the ones that stay liquid at room temperature. So those are your monounsaturates. Olive oil is a good example. Your polyunsaturates, vegetable oil, canola oil is a good example. Then I won't go to too much of it, but some of them are in the middle, like avocado is mostly monounsaturated. They're a little bit of combination. But avocado is a really, really healthy way to get fat. And fat satisfies us. We have a craving for fat. So sometimes if you say I'm eating no fat or such low fat, all you think about is a hamburger. So if you allow yourself some healthy fats, yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
America, supposedly we took on this cutting out fat out of our diet. Did it actually backfire?
Well, it partially backfired because of what we put in its place, which was sugar. So when you get fake fat, if you look at that fake ice cream in the, I'm sorry, it's not really fake ice cream, but the low-fat ice cream, it has twice as much sugar. So if we got rid of the fat and replaced it with that ubiquitous broccoli, we would be in good shape. But we got rid of fat and we replaced it with other things that were a little less healthy. So I'm not a strict low-fat person. Fat belongs in every diet. I'm not a vegan, but you can certainly live long and well without saturated fat, without meat fat. But if you enjoy it, low fat is not the way to go. I can talk, I'm not going to go on and on, but we could talk a lot about like the keto diet and whether that works and why that works. Keto diet works well in short bouts because it changes the way your body metabolizes. You go into a state of ketosis where your body uses ketones. So you lose a lot of weight, but very few people can live on it for long. So you do it for like 2 weeks and you lose 7 pounds and you feel great. And then, you start to want the other things in your diet, and then you gain 8 pounds, and then you do it again and lose 5, and then you go back to your old diet. So I always say, diet became a dirty word, but diet is just what you eat. So just try to make your regular diet healthy. If you do want to do a short keto burst to see if you can reduce weight, by all means. But when you go back, pick out the 5 things in your diet that are better to get rid of and work on 3 of them. That's a good way to do it. So I'll move on to diet. I'll talk a little bit about quit smoking. I think that's like the one thing that most of us as Americans got pretty smart about. We're much less smoking than we used to see, but smoking is really, really detrimental to heart disease, to high blood pressure, to diabetes. And in order for smoking to be as unhealthy as being overweight, you have to be 70 pounds overweight. So smoking is the number one thing. If someone smokes, not only does it lead to cancer because of the tars, it's the nicotine that raises your blood pressure and it damages, it puts little nicks on the inside of your blood vessels so that any cholesterol you eat is more likely to get stuck in those nicks oversimplifying a bit, and cause the thickening, the hardening of the arteries that leads to stroke and heart attacks. The other thing that's super, super good for diabetes is, did I skip a page? I think I did. I don't think you guys want me to go into the meds, but I can. The other thing that's really, really good for diabetes is movement. And I don't call it exercise, because exercise is something that I really usually don't want to do. I just call it movement. I wear a Fitbit. I try to get my 10,000 steps. I'm a very competitive person, so now when I go to ShopRite, I park in the furthest spot so I can get, 800 steps when I run in for that one thing that I forgot. So think of it as movement, and do movement that you love. Anything that you do because you have to do it is gonna just be something you don't want to do and something you can't wait to get rid of. I bought, when I turned 50, my birthday present to myself was a really good elliptical trainer that I keep in my, like a gym grade one that I keep in my basement. And I only let myself watch those girly shows that I don't admit that I watch when I'm on it. That's when I put on Virgin River or Bridgerton. Otherwise I don't get to watch it. So, when I'm jonesing for my next episode of Bridgerton, I just get on that elliptical. And aerobic exercise that gets your heart rate up is really, really good for you. But that's not to say that movement where you don't get your heart rate really up is not, it might not be as good, but certainly better than sitting and watching the TV. So, that sometimes maybe that's your trick. You reward yourself with watching a TV show when you're at the gym, or you play, music that you really like into your ears to get you going. It's also fun when we think about what we do with our friends. Like, usually what we do with our friends is stuff that's less healthy rather than more healthy. I go out with my girlfriends, the wine comes out, we're ordering dessert. You go around the table and go, who wants dessert? Where I'm saying no, my mouth goes yes, So try to think about the things that you can do with your friends that are active. One of the best ways to stay active, if your apartment or house allows it, is to get a pet. When I got a dog, I was out winter, summer, rain, because that dog wanted to be out. And being outside, it just got me a lot of movement. So figure out what you love to do. It can be yoga. Yoga's probably not as good as like high intensity interval training, but it's certainly better than sitting on the couch. And it has its own benefits, yoga, on stress management and mindfulness, which can be super helpful also. Sleep is super important for diabetes. A lot of us are so darn busy in our lives, we don't have time to sleep. And trying to get at least 7 hours of sleep is really essential. Studies have found that 7 to 9 hours of sleep are the sweet spot. If you sleep more than 9, that's less healthy. And if you sleep less than 7, and of course you can have a busy week where you get 5 hours a few nights, it all is over time. And then stress reduction, which I'll talk more about tomorrow. Should I go into medications for diabetes? Oh, question. Thank you.
Yeah, I heard that as you get older, you need more sleep. Is that true or not?
Well, no, I don't think so. Kids need more sleep than adults, and oftentimes seniors really sleep less. You shouldn't go less than 7 hours. Younger people, when I say 7 to 9, that is for adults. For younger people, they really do say 10 hours. For the littler kids, babies sleep pretty much all the time. They did some interesting studies. I wish they would do them around here. When they start high school an hour later, kids do better in school. So the sleep, and especially with social media, and you're sleeping next to your phone, and you get an alert, and you have to text Johnny because you can't wait until tomorrow because that's so important. That's really going to influence your sleep. And a lot of diabetics have undiagnosed sleep apnea where you're not sleeping well. So, sleep is a really important part of self-care. And sometimes creating nice sleep rituals like a warm bath, warm milk. Everybody talks about milk that's very high in tryptophan, which is a relaxing amino acid. That's why we all crash after Thanksgiving, because turkey is super high in tryptophan. So eat like a little bit of warm milk, a couple of almonds are high in tryptophan. That can really help you relax. And then, of course, stress reduction. I can go on and talk about medications for diabetes. Should I skip that?
Yeah.
Up or down? Skip the medication? Okay. But I'll just go quickly and say there are oral medications. Everybody's heard of metformin these days. That's the first one they put you on. There are insulin sensitizers, medicine that help you use insulin better. There are medications now, we see all the commercials. Any of us in healthcare think one of the worst things that happen in America, well, not one of the worst things, we have plenty to be sorry for, but the direct marketing of medications to consumers is terrible. It's beautiful American capitalism. Everybody's trying to sell you Viagra or Eliquis or something else, and it's really done our country a disservice. In no other European country, African country, do they try to market medications to people. They allow the healthcare providers to choose. But anyway, there are lots of medications that we've all heard of because we see the commercials. Januvia, that's what's called the DP4 inhibitors. There's lots of different ways to treat diabetes. And the best thing is when you combine the medications with lifestyle changes, you can use much less medication. I can talk a little bit about hypertension, if that would be helpful. Hypertension, yeah, question. Should we cut? Great. We're good. So thank you very much, everyone. I did meander a bit, but you were such a good audience. So I do have a sphygmomanometer here. If anyone would like their blood pressure checked, I'm happy to check blood pressures. I also brought, which everyone hates, my body composition meter. If anyone wants to know their BMI or their percent body fat, I'm happy to check that as well. And any questions?
Yes, we do have a few questions. Pastor Sam, you want to start?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for information that you're giving to us. It is very informative, and we appreciate all of it. One question that I have is, how much do you know about the new variants of the COVID-19, which
Yes.
is the Delta variant? How much do you know about?
Sadly, a lot. In my company, because I was working in New York City and we closed down, I've been sort of living and breathing COVID for the last 18 months. So viruses always mutate. That's what they do for a living. That's why you need a different flu shot each year and why there's 4 different strains in the flu shot. So a virus's job is to mutate, just like a kid's job is to try to test the boundaries. So they're always going to try to change. One of the reasons we need to get the vaccine worldwide is to stop these mutations. They've now started naming the mutations with Greek letters. They actually call what we used to call COVID-19 alpha and beta, now lambda is coming. Delta is a variant that we first noticed in the UK. It's different than the B117, which was what we called the UK variant. Delta really came out of India, but now they're tracing it back to the UK also. Delta is a variant that unfortunately is much more contagious than the other variants. Something that you're hearing in the popular press, which really has not been found to be true, is it has not been found to be much more serious than the other ones. People who get Delta presents differently. What I like to call classic COVID presented with body aches, headache, fever, cough, and chills. Delta's a tricky little virus. It presents with runny nose, sore throat, and headache. That's not to say you're not going to get a fever and cough, but what a lot of people think is a cold is really Delta, which is why, if you don't have classic COVID, you might not go into isolation and get yourself tested right away. The good news about COVID so far is that the vaccines, especially the 2-dose mRNA vaccines, Moderna and Pfizer, have been found to be very effective against Delta. Not as effective, but very effective. And one thing I like to tell people about the vaccines is the vaccines were really not designed to prevent the illnesses. They were designed to prevent death and serious illness from them. the viruses. So right now, Moderna and Pfizer are holding up pretty well with Delta. Johnson & Johnson a little less so, but it's doing okay. It was very interesting that Pfizer, I won't get political, but a lot of the American system sort of predicated on making money. And Pfizer went back into the lab and they were creating a booster, and the CDC had to say, stop. You know, we don't have any evidence that you need a booster right now. You know, they're doing it so that Pfizer stock raises. Of course, they want to be cutting edge, because if we find out these vaccines only last 18 months, it's good to have a booster in the pipeline. But right now, Delta is definitely more infectious. It presents with stuffy nose, sore throat, headache, but also can have the cough and the fever and the full thing. It is very responsive to the vaccine in that people who've been vaccinated tend not to get very ill from it. And people who are fully vaccinated, which is 2 weeks after your second or only dose, if they get the illness, any variant, Delta, Alpha, Lambda, you're going to have a lower viral load, so you're less contagious, but you are still contagious, and you should isolate for 10 days from the onset of your symptoms.
Thank you.
Yes.
So are there tests now for the Delta? So if
No.
I have a runny nose and a headache.
Well, there's tests for COVID. It doesn't matter if you have, you know, Delta or you test for COVID. So there's no need. People say, my doctor thinks it may be a variant. And I don't mean it in a negative way, but so what? You know, you got COVID. It doesn't matter if you have Delta or you have Alpha.
Right.
It's the same isolation, the same treatment, which is rest, fluids, hydrate. I always recommend electrolyte water. A sports drink can be really helpful. But there's no different treatment for Delta. The only reason to find out where the variants are circulating is for public health authorities to see what's going on. There's no need for you to know which virus you have. Once, you know, and there's really no, so far they don't have no research if Delta is going to be more likely to have long COVID, where long COVID is when symptoms don't go away. So they don't know yet about Delta and long COVID. They do know that it gets the younger people, you know, where younger people were usually asymptomatic for classic COVID. Younger people are getting pretty sick from Delta, so that's why, you know, but the vaccine coverage is very good so far. Not as good as classic COVID, but still pretty good.
Do you have any information about Austin, about this area and the variant?
No, I really, you know, we don't, like your regular labs, if you have a test through Open Door, you go to a lab, they don't test every specimen.
Okay.
The Wadsworth lab, which is in Albany, and there's one in Downstate Medical Center in Brooklyn, those are the only ones that are doing variant testing. But they really do it more for public health surveillance to see where the variants are. Right now they're saying Delta is probably between 20 and 40% in the Northeast, but they're predicting it'll be the predominant variant by August. It's coming fast. But again, the vaccines are holding tough. So getting vaccinated is the best thing you can do for yourself, for your loved ones, and to get rid of these miserable things.
So if I've been vaccinated, I could still possibly be a carrier for Delta?
There's no such thing as being a carrier. A carrier means you have well, it depends how you define a carrier. In medicine, we define a carrier as someone who never knows they have the disease and have it forever. So hepatitis is a good sort of way. HIV, you may be asymptomatic for HIV, but you have it and you're going to have it forever. If you get Delta, you're going to be infectious for the same 10 days as everybody else. So you may not know it if you're fully vaccinated. You may have such a mild case that you don't know it, but you're only going to be infectious those same 10 days. When I contact trace, I did my certification through Hopkins. When you contact trace, you go 10 days from the onset of your symptoms. But if you don't have any symptoms, you don't know what date to use. So in that case, you go 10 days from the date you tested. And you're contagious 2 days before you're symptomatic and 10 days from when you become symptomatic if you're mildly or moderately ill. Mild, moderate illness is anything you can recuperate at home without oxygen. If you're in the hospital, we double that isolation period to 20 days because you're more infectious. Yes?
Yeah, so a person who had the COVID before and have built up antibodies, would you recommend those individuals to still take the vaccine?
I do. They did a fascinating study and they found the most effective protection against COVID is having the illness and getting vaccinated. They feel there's almost 0% that you're going to get sick again. So if you've been, if you've used monoclonal antibodies or convalescent plasma, then you have to wait 90 days to get vaccinated. But if you haven't, you can get vaccinated as soon as you feel well and you've cleared isolation. So it is recommended, especially because we look at antibodies and we test antibodies, but your antibody pathway is only one of your immunogenicity, one of your immune pathways. There's also T-cell mediated responses. So even when your antibody titer wanes, you still have some protection. So that's why, like, some people, especially in some affluent neighborhoods, are getting blood tested every 3 weeks to see if their vaccine is still effective. That is not recommended because your antibody is only one measure of your immunicity. Yeah.
This meeting, we have a longer time to wear a mask.
I mean, it's tough. I'm fully vaccinated. I still wear my mask. I just, I still try to social distance. I like to call it my COVID pod. So like my family's in my COVID pod. I have a few friends that are in my COVID pod. And it's getting looser and looser. We just started going back to church, but I go to the Unitarian Fellowship in Croton, but we're still having people wear masks. We're telling people who are unvaccinated are required to wear masks, but we're strongly suggesting it for all people. They are yucky, we can't wait to get rid of them, but again, the vaccine is the best weapon to have a mask burning party someday. Although I don't think it's happening anytime soon, certainly not soon enough. Great, well thank you very much everyone. I'm sorry I saw that.
Oh no, you did great. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we give her a round of applause? That was awesome. And awesome information. Thank you for those of you that are posting some of what she's saying in the in the live stream that we're doing. So if you want to get your body mass index checked, your blood pressure, Terri still has a few more minutes. You can do that. I know Bishop wanted to get hers checked. There was really great information. One thing that really stood out to me when she talked about diabetes, and this is like an eye-opener, because a lot of us do say diabetes runs in my family, and so we kind of expect that. Like, we treat it like it's a genetic thing. So that was a real eye-opener. Like, no, it's not necessarily a genetic thing. We have a choice in this. So that was a profound statement for me, that there's something we can do about it. Even if grandma and auntie and everybody else had it, that doesn't mean that I'm definitely predisposed to it. So thank you for that information, and also the information that she gave us on COVID. Terri will be here with us tomorrow again, 3 to 4. If you missed her live today, please come out tomorrow. We're going to be focusing during this time slot on managing stress, especially during the pandemic. Don't forget, 5 o'clock we have Ask the Pastor counseling sessions every day. 12 o'clock we have lunch every day. This evening at 6 o'clock we have What is Grief with Dr. Espinoza, Michelle Espinoza. She is the hospice palliative doctor with Northwell at Phelps. And we have one of our own and also wonderful RN from Northwell as well, Candace Johnson, she's doing skincare is self-care, right? So come on over. That we start at 6 again, and then at 7 o'clock. So We have a few more moments. Anybody, Bishop, you can go over.
I'll stay, if anyone
You'll
wants
stay.
to-
Okay, she'll stay. So come on down. You can get some screenings done. So we're gonna end the live stream, and we will be back up at 6 o'clock promptly. Promptly. Come on over 81 Croton Avenue. Thank you.